Good afternoon to everybody. Pleasure to be up here with you. It's been almost a decade since I've been up here in Hollister, so it really is a privilege for me. My name is Michael Heiss, and I've known Fred for a long, long time. Believe me, a long, long time. I think it was in another lifetime, Fred. We both graduated together the same year from Ambassador College in 1964. Now today, what I would like to try to do, and hopefully I can do it right, is to give you, portray to you the lesson that I learned that kept me around so that I am here before you today. Now, God has done this for all of us at one time or another. The year is 1958. Here I was, an 18-year-old that had just come to realize that Jesus was the Christ. Now, since I was reared in a Jewish home, I will tell you that is not exactly a household name. You can believe that. Well, anyway, my good friend Peter Petromianos, that's a nice Greek name, took me to his church, Plato, the largest Greek Orthodox Church this side of Athens. And we went there. It's a magnificent building, really is. And he was talking to the priest, explaining circumstances. And then the priest looked up and smiled, eyes beaming. He walks up to me, because here was this nice Jewish boy who was coming to Christ. This was a red letter day for him. And then he proceeded to give me an admonition. I can only say it was God who did it through him, because there's no other reason why he would ever say this. He looked at me, put his arms on my shoulders, and he said, "Whatever you do, do not look to a man. He is just that, a man. He will fail you. Always look to Christ. He will never fail you." I remembered that. Well, I was 1958. I was off to Drake University. I'd heard the broadcast, started writing in for some literature. And then there was part of the literature, there was a brochure about Ambassador College. And what caught my eye was, those of you who like history may be able to make world-famous discoveries under Herman L. Hay. And I thought, wow, that's for me, because I loved history. But I'll probably never get there. But then again, you see, God knew I was going to get there, because he was going to get me there, because I didn't know this. Well, put in my application, got there. And there I saw them, the luminaries of the Worldwide Church of God, still then the Radio Church of God, later to become the Worldwide Church of God. Wow. Herbert Armstrong, Garner Jet Armstrong, Roderick Meredith, Herman Hay, I read their articles in the Plain Truth. And I was bushy-eyed, ready to take notes and learn, which I did. But after a while, the bloom came off the rose. I couldn't believe this. Backstabbing, politicking, lying, dishonesty. And I'm thinking, what is this? This is God's church. This is supposed to be God's headquarters. Well, God was trying to teach me something. To throw out the water, but keep the baby. That he was testing me, as he's testing all of you, and always has. Anyway, Herman Hay hired me in 1971, because we're now talking about a holy day. Maybe you've heard of it. It's called Pentecost. Well, what day do we celebrate or commemorate Pentecost on? Church of God has kept it on the 6th of Sivan, the way the Orthodox Jews do in the whole Jewish community. How well I know. Kept it on a Monday, kept it on a Sunday. Well, I am now going to show you how we can prove that Pentecost is on a Monday and it's also on a Sunday. How do we do that? It's very simple. Part of my job was to go to school in preparation for accreditation. So Dr. Heiss said, go to school, learn. So I went to the Hebrew Union College, which in LA, which is the educational arm of the Reformed Jewish movement. And one of the classes I had was ancient Israel history. And the visiting professor was from Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And he called for an oral exam. And I'm thinking, oh, no, I don't know beans to split peas about presenting an oral exam. So I go in, and sure enough, he's got to straighten me out. Poor boy, I needed it. He says, this is what you do for discourse. You begin with a supposition, a premise, call it what you will, a given in the world of logicians. And then you take the data, all of it. So in our case, it would be the Hebrew text, Greek text, archaeological findings, Josephus, Polybius, all of them. And you interpret them in the light of your premise, and voila, you've proved your premise. And I'm thinking, and I blurt out, respectfully, of course, that's reasoning in circles. To which he replied, and I will never forget his reply, all reasoning is reasoning in circles. Think about that. You don't try to find the truth. You simply start out with a premise, and your goal is to prove your premise, whether your premise is right or wrong. And this is what the world has done. But what hurt me was, this is what the worldwide church did. And above all, to the man I came to know and love and grow and appreciate so much, Herman L. Hay. He did that. Now, does anybody remember? Oh, I know Fred does. Howard Clark. Howard Clark was a very interesting fellow, truly an interesting man. At any rate, but he was fond of saying that Dr. Hay was very fond of oddballs and Jews. Well, since I was an oddball Jew, I guess I had it made with him. So anyway, he was able, in 1971, to go and traverse the Middle East, the route of the Exodus. Now, and he wrote it in 2 articles. Now, you can go online and get them, but I still have my original copies of those good newses. June, July, what is it here? May, June, and July. 1971. 1971? That's nigh into 50 years ago or so. Well, and he had me with him. I was with him all the way. They crossed the exit, they crossed the sea here, and they went south, they went here, and this was on a certain day, and that was on a certain day, and oh, I had my pen out, you know, and I was making my notes. I looked at calendrical dates, and he was right, all the way, until. And that's what I want to discuss with you today, the until. So please, turn with me, if you would, to Exodus 19. Exodus chapter 19. And we read in verse 1, in the 3rd month, when the children of Israel had gone forth out of the land of Egypt, on the same day they came to the wilderness of Sinai. Now, what day was this? This was the 5th day of the week. It was a Thursday. In fact, if you follow the notation, go down to the center margin, you'll see an explanation to that effect. And you can work backwards to show it was a Thursday. Well, anyway, so let's read it. Sharpen up your eyeballs, read critically. It's very, very important that you read critically. Beginning in verse 2. The Israelites, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. For they had journeyed from Rephidim and came to the desert of Sinai and pitched in the wilderness. Israel camped there Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him out of the mountain, saying, Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, Tell the children of Israel, you've seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice, indeed, keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all the people, for all the earth is mine. And you shall be to me a kingdom of priests, holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. Moses came and called for the elders of the people, laid before them all the words which the Lord commanded him. All the people answered together and said, All that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, Lo, I come to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear what I speak with you, and believe you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. Verse 10. And the Lord said to Moses, Go to the people, sanctify them today, tomorrow, let them wash their clothes, be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. That is Pentecost. Question for all of you. Verse 10, 11. When God said, Go sanctify them, be ready the third day. What day was that spoken on? Did you follow it all here?
Thursday.
No, not Thursday. They arrived on Thursday, then Moses goes up to the mountain on Friday. Well, let me tell you what the good Dr. Heiss said. And then we will go back to what that professor told me about logic and reasoning and premise. When you see it, you'll understand the sleight of hand that is here. Hopefully you will. That Sabbath, Moses climbed Sinai once. He said the words that were spoken on that day were on a Sabbath. All right? So if God says today, then tomorrow, and the third day, that's Monday. Voila! We have a Monday Pentecost. Don't we see that? Okay, what's wrong? What's wrong with this? What's the mistake here? It's a deliberate, deceitful one. And this is what hurt me so much. It really did. Moses went up only twice. Read that carefully. There's no Sabbath journey up that mountain. Never was. Never was. Moses went up twice on Friday, and while he was still there on a Friday, God told him, Be ready today, tomorrow, and the third day, Sunday. It was always on a Sunday. Why did Dr. Heiss do that? Because remember, what did the professor tell me back in 1971? You start with a premise. What's the premise? What's the assumption? Well, the assumption is that Pentecost is on Monday. Even if it's not on Monday, it's on Monday. Back in 1974, there was a watershed year for the Church of God. Two major doctrines were changed. What we call DNR, divorce or remarriage, and Pentecost. And Dr. Heiss called me up and came over to my house. And I'm thinking, what does he want with me? I don't know. We went through a 3-hour marathon on Pentecost. And then he revealed something to me which was absolutely dumbfounding. He told me that he had years before come to the conclusion that Pentecost was on Sunday. And you got to understand this. I'm trying to take this in. And I'm thinking, you knew it was on Sunday? You proved it was on Sunday? And yet you still promulgated Monday? Was there a reason for that? Remember about a premise, supposition? What was his mindset? Finally, I figured it out. His basic assumption was government from the top down. In other words, God reveals everything through his leader, through the Pope, the chief rabbi, or in our case, the one who calls himself an apostle, Herbert Armstrong. No, it's not up for me to go and point things out to him. God has to do it deliberately, directly. It was false, but this was his mindset. This was his premise. So therefore, Pentecost was on a Monday. Even if it wasn't on a Monday, it was on a Monday because the church government said it was on a Monday. And what was so disturbing was that 8 years later, it was 7 years later, 1978, 78, Dr. Hay gave us a sermon. I know, I've got the tape. And on that sermon, he completely reversed himself. Fascinating. He said on that day and that year, Passover was not on a Tuesday, Wednesday. Passover was on a Wednesday, Thursday. The night to be much observed was a Thursday, Friday. Nisan, the first month, had only 29 days, not 30, because it was not a fixed calendar. This is the good doctors speaking to me and saying. Therefore, they came and arrived on a Friday at Mount Sinai. So Moses goes up twice on that Friday, comes down, Pentecost is on Sunday. He completely eliminates what he had said before. No mention of a trip up the mountain on the Sabbath, because it was a fiction. It was made out of whole cloth. But why did he change? Remember now, the church authority says Sunday is Pentecost. Therefore, what did the professor say? You state your premise, you look at all the data, and you interpret that data in the light of your assumption to prove your assumption. So now Pentecost is on Sunday, and you're going to manipulate the data. You're going to eliminate this trip up the mountain on a Saturday, and you're going to come up with a Sunday Pentecost, because that's what the leadership said. Now, you got to understand, I like that man. I never met a kinder, more gentler individual who was dishonest with the facts. How do you set doctrine like that? But he did. And I'm kind of like this. Is this really the church of God? Is this really proper? Well, once again, flooding back to my mind, the Greek Orthodox priest. Do not look to a man, for he is just that. He is a man. He will fail you. Look to Christ. He will never fail you. That's what I had to do. And I realized, okay, all the shenanigans going on there, may God be true, though every man a liar. There we go. You've got to look to Christ. And that was the primary lesson God was teaching me, no matter what. Something else to give you an idea. One of my jobs at the college was in booklet department. And the first 6 months, my job, can you imagine this? I was paid to go read every booklet the church had ever put out, analyze it, criticize it. What can we prove? What can we not prove? Now, I'd read the booklets, don't misunderstand. Yes, I did. But I had not read every one of them with a fine-tooth comb, checking out every scripture, every historical reference. I just didn't do that. I don't know how many of you ever did, but that was my job. So I did. And it was mind-boggling to see the misstatements, the false statements, the inadequacies, and what was worth, the bibliography. We would, in those booklets, we would be quoting, or let's put it this way, we were relying on Alexander Hislop's Two Babylons, which is not necessarily a bad thing. No. But we would never give Hislop the credit. It would simply be stating this and this and this and this, and underneath would be a source. Well, you see, that source came from Hyslop's two Babylons. We were using Hyslop's work, and we took his bibliography and just applied it wholesale. And that's why I realized, oh, so over here we have the reference. It's just the first name or the last name of the scholar and his work. Well, why don't you give the full name and the history of it? Because Hyslop didn't do that. They took the bibliography as it was in Hyslop, pretending that we had done it. No individual in the Church of God read all those books solidly. And this was scholarship? Now, to many people, that's not such a big deal. True. But to me, it is a big deal. Because how can I say something knowing it's wrong? I can't. And God was trying to teach me. Doesn't matter what they do. That's their problem. I am God. I am the Christ. I will guide you. I will be with you. So hang in there. And the biggest lesson of them all was hang on to the rock. And what's the rock? 1 Corinthians 10:4. The rock that followed them was Christ. So it's up to me now to see the truth as I understand it, to preach it, to explain it as best I can. And I want now to take what I think Joe said, as I remember earlier about God saying of Abraham, now I know, and so forth. You brought that out. I want to take that, if I may, to a higher level. In essence, what God is saying to us, and what he has to be able to say to us, and what he must be able to say to us, or if he can't, we're not going to be in that kingdom. We've got to get to the point where God can look at us and say, now I know that you are who you are. I know you're loyal to me. I know you're willing to give up father, sister, mother, son, brother, yea, in your own life. Because if you can't, we're not going to be there. We're just not. The idea that God knows everything even before we do it is false. That's a pagan idea. It comes from the Greek philosophy. The one, the etan, the one. No. God knows a lot. He's the most powerful being in the universe. And when he says, I will do this, trust me, he will do it. No power in heaven and earth can stop him. But he does not control your mind. He will not control your mind. And he does not know what you're going to do. He might have a pretty good idea. He hopes. But unless he can say, now I know you're faithful. Because think, if we have it right, we're going to be part of the family of God. I mean, God, or as Mr. Armstrong used to say, as God is God, meaning the same power, the same spirit essence. He could roll stars off your fingertips. If he's going to give us that kind of power, he's got to know and know that he knows that we're loyal to him. No ifs, ands, or buts. And what's the way to do that? Hang on to the rock, which is Christ. Remember Matthew 7, faithful one who built this house on the rock. The storms came, the winds blew, and one of my friends used to say, yeah, the kind of wind that will take a matchstick and blow it through a telephone pole. No matter what, Christ will help you. If you have grappling hooks, if that's what it takes to hang on to the rock. Now, I can tell you, I've known some people, and one of them is a pretty good friend of mine. And when he gets onto something, he does not let go. He has been vilified in the past. He's been criticized in the past. But he is bulldogged for the truth of God. You all know him, don't we? Sitting right over there. No, I'm not just praising him to the skies. I saw him. He hangs on to the truth. That's why we're all here. Because we know he does. So, ultimately the lesson, whatever you do, hang on to that rock and never let go. you.